Story 1. I'm cruising through life at 29 years old, and I've got this pretty awesome gig as a wedding planner. Not just any wedding planner though. I'm the boss of my own events company. So what do? I throw these epic wedding parties where people celebrate the biggest love fest of their lives. It's like being a professional Cupid, but with more cake and flowers involved. Now let's rewind the tape back to my high school days. That's when I ran into Emily. We were kind of the odd ones out in school, not really fitting into any of the typical cliques. But honestly, that's what made everything click between us. It was as if we were meant to be best friends from the start. Suddenly, life turned into this awesome adventure. Imagine having that one friend who's down for midnight ice cream runs, binge-watching cheesy movies until dawn, and who just gets you on a whole other level. That was Emily for me. Emily wasn't just any friend. She was like the sister I never got to have. We shared everything, from secrets about our crushes to our wildest dreams. Through every high and every low, we were there for each other, solid as a rock. I mean, there's no one else I would trust more with my life's remote control. But here's the twist in the plot. Emily, my ride or die, made a choice that kind of took me by surprise. She got married super young, like at the age of 19, and who was the lucky guy? Her sweetheart from high school. Now you might be thinking, wait, what? That's pretty young, right? Yeah, you're not the only one. A lot of folks around us were throwing advice her way, trying to get her to think it over. They were all about caution, saying things might not be as fairy tale perfect as she thought. But Emily, she wasn't having any of it. To her, this guy was the ultimate, the love of her life, her forever person. She was so sure about him that she was ready to tune out everyone else's opinions. In her mind, life without him just wasn't an option. So after all that lovey-dovey stuff Emily had for her first husband, things didn't exactly go as planned. Just a year and a half later, they ended up getting divorced. It was a tough time for Emily. She was super heartbroken and pretty much a mess for months. But like the friend I am, I stuck by her side, helping her through all the tears and ice cream binge sessions. But here's where things take a turn. Emily didn't stay down for long. She managed to pick up the pieces of her broken heart, and boom, she was walking down the aisle again by the age of 23. This time, she married a guy named Marco. Now, plot twist. Emily's wedding to Marco was where I met my future hubby, Henry. He was buddies with Marco, which pretty much meant fate had its plan all along. Emily and Marco were doing great, and Henry and I hit it off from the get-go. We started dating pretty much right away, and everything felt just right. We were all about those double dates, going on vacations together, and celebrating holidays at each other's places, like one big happy family. Then Henry popped the question just 8 months into our whirlwind romance. Saying yes was the easiest choice I've ever made. Meanwhile, Emily was on her way to becoming a mom. She had a baby boy, and let me tell you, we timed our wedding perfectly so she could rock her bridesmaid dress post-baby for a good while. Everything seemed picture perfect. Emily was embracing motherhood, and I was getting hitched to the love of my life with my best friend by my side. Life was good, filled with baby giggles and wedding bells. Emily has these kids, right? And to me, they're like the coolest little humans ever. I mean, I seriously love these kids as if they were my own. Now, here's the deal. Having my own kids wasn't something I saw in my cards. I've been through some stuff health-wise and mentally. Stuff that just made me say, nope, not for me. And guess what? Henry, the most supportive guy ever, was right there with me. He never, not even once, got bummed out about us deciding not to have a mini-us running around. He's just that kind of awesome, you know? Plus, Henry and Emily's kids, they're like peas in a pod. He's great with them, and it's pretty heartwarming to see. So in a weird, roundabout way, having these kids in our life kind of filled this gap. It's like we had a family unit minus the baby diapers and midnight feedings, and it felt good, like really good. Now, fast forward to this totally normal day. Out of the blue, my phone rings, and it's Emily. She's on the other end, and man, she's not okay. She's sobbing, really going through it, saying stuff like she doesn't even want to be here anymore. That hit me hard. So what did I do? I literally threw my work stuff aside. I mean, who cares about work at a time like this, right? And I bolted out the door, probably broke a few speed limits getting to her place. When I got there, the scene was like something out of a movie. Emily was there on the floor, a total mess. Her makeup was all over the place, looking like she just watched the saddest movie ever back to back. And the house, it looked like it had been flipped upside down. I'm talking about a real disaster zone. So I'm standing there trying to take all this in, and I ask her what in the world happened, and boom, she just bursts into tears even more. It was one of those moments where you just feel everything all at once, you know? Here's Emily, someone I care about heaps, and she's in this deep, dark place, and there I am, just trying to be there for her. Feeling a bit lost, but also knowing this is where I needed to be. It was intense, real intense. After some gentle nudging, Emily finally showed me something that totally changed the vibe of the room. She pulled out a pregnancy test, and yep, it was positive. She was going to have a baby. My heart pretty much did a happy dance right there. I gave her the biggest hug ever because, come on, this was huge, happy news. I was all, why the tears? This is amazing. We should totally throw you a party. But then she hit me with the real reason she was a hot mess on the floor. She spilled that Ben, her husband, had bailed on her. They'd been at each other's throats over just about everything these past few months, and now he'd just up and left. Said he'd send her divorce papers and help out with the kids. But as far as being Mr. Husband, that ship had sailed. My heart just sank for her, seeing her so crushed, knowing she was going through this storm all over again, especially with kids in the picture. It was gut-wrenching. So what could I do? I decided to stick around, be there for Emily and the kids. It was kind of perfect timing because my husband was off to Chicago for a business thing for a week, and he was pretty chill about me staying over with Emily. It all just fit. I kept asking Emily, trying to piece together the puzzle, like why would Ben just flip the script and bail like that? It was mind-boggling, trying to understand how things could go south so fast. But there I was, just trying to be the best friend I could, hoping to make at least a little bit of this nightmare feel okay for her. Emily has been my ride or die since we were kids. We shared secrets, clothes, and so many laughs. She and Ben, right, they were like the couple everyone envied because they just seemed so right together. Like every time you saw them, you thought, wow, goals. Emily never held back with me, always spilling the tea about everything. But then stuff got weird. Ben, out of nowhere, starts acting all cold and distant with Emily. It's like one day they're all lovey-dovey, and the next, Ben is practically a stranger in his own home. He even starts crashing in the guest room just to avoid being near Emily. My blood was boiling, honestly. How could Ben be so cold and not even bother explaining why? Like communication 101, dude. Suddenly, Emily gets hit with divorce papers. That's a massive slap in the face, especially since she's dealing with a lot right now. Like hello, she's pregnant again. Ben should at least have that on his mind before pulling such a stunt. I couldn't let this slide, so I hit up my husband last night, really needing him to step in and have a bro-to-bro chat with Ben. My husband, Henry, he's a stand-up guy. He promised he'd sort this out with Ben once he's back from his trip. I'm crossing my fingers that Henry can get through to him because seeing Emily this messed up is breaking my heart. But then, just when you think it can't get any more messed up, it does. I get the shock of my life. Emily, my supposed best friend, the one I've stood by through everything, has been sneaking around with my husband. I mean, how could she? After all the late-night talks, the shoulder to cry on, and all the support through her ups and downs, she does this? I felt so betrayed. Like, how do you even move past something like that? It's like everything we shared was just a lie. So after all the drama with Emily and Ben, I was really hoping my husband, Henry, would have a serious chat with Ben once he got back from his trip to Chicago. I trusted Henry to handle it, but man, was that a mistake. When Henry got back, instead of telling me he talked to Ben, he just went on a rant about how Ben was no good for Emily and it was better they split. But here's the thing. Emily didn't want this split. It was all Ben's doing. Henry hadn't even bothered to talk to Ben. That got me thinking, okay, fine, I'll just do it myself. So I picked up the phone and called Ben. He was surprisingly chill, asking about me and the kids, which kind of caught me off guard. Why was he being Mr. Nice Guy all of a sudden? Curious, I asked him how he was holding up without Emily and the boys. I mean, he adored Emily, so what on earth could push him to pull the plug on their marriage? Ben was like, let's not get into it over the phone. How about lunch? I thought that was a great idea and invited him to meet at this wedding venue I was working at. We could grab lunch at the diner nearby. He was on board with the idea. For some reason, I felt like keeping this lunch plan with Ben a secret from Henry. Maybe it was the way Henry dismissed the whole situation, or maybe I just wanted to get some answers without any extra drama. Either way, I was setting up a lunch date with Ben, hoping to get to the bottom of things. So I decided to handle things myself since Henry, after his trip to Chicago, basically said Ben was all wrong for Emily and that it was good they were splitting up. I was like, hold up. Emily didn't choose this. Ben did. And guess what? Henry hadn't even talked to Ben about it. That's when I knew I had to step in and get the real story. I hit Ben up, and he was all polite and concerned, asking about me and the kids, which kind of threw me off. Why was he acting so nice? So I asked him straight up how he was coping without his boys around. I mean, he adored Emily. So what on earth made him want to split? Ben suggested we shouldn't dive into this over the phone and proposed meeting up for lunch instead. I thought it was a good idea and asked him to meet me at a wedding venue I was working at, suggesting we grab lunch at the nearby diner. I decided not to tell Henry about this meetup, feeling like he might try to stop me. And boy, am I glad I didn't tell Henry. He would have definitely tried to talk me out of it, and then I would have missed out on hearing Ben's side of the story. Ben was punctual, and once we sat down, he prepared me for a bombshell. He respected my friendship with Emily, acknowledging how much I cared for her happiness, just as he did. But then he dropped the news that shattered everything. Emily had cheated on him, not just once but multiple times, and this time, he couldn't overlook it, despite his love for her. I was furious, ready to unleash my anger on Ben for even suggesting such a thing. Emily cheat? Impossible. I tried to calm down, suggesting maybe it was all a big misunderstanding and that they needed to talk things through, especially for their boys' sake. But then Ben hit me with something I never saw coming. He said those kids weren't even his, that Emily had been involved with someone else. My whole world spun. Everything I thought I knew about my best friend suddenly seemed like a lie. How could this be happening? Hearing Ben say the boys and even the new baby on the way weren't his just floored me. I couldn't believe what I was hearing. It felt like some kind of messed up joke. But then Ben hit me with the most earth-shattering news ever. He said the kids were Henry's. I lost it. I jumped up, ready to call him every name in the book, accusing him of trying to destroy not just his own marriage but mine as well. Ben, though, somehow managed to get me to sit back down and listen to the whole painful truth. He explained everything from the start. Ben always had this lingering doubt about being able to have kids because of some health checks he underwent while serving in the U.S. Army. Despite these doubts, when Emily first got pregnant, he was over the moon, thinking it was some sort of miracle. Their first son was born, and Ben was on cloud 9. Nothing else mattered to him. Then Emily got pregnant again, and he was just as ecstatic, but deep down suspicions started bubbling up. He tried to push these doubts aside, to ignore the little signs and gut feelings, but it became too much. About 6 months ago, Ben couldn't take the uncertainty anymore. He secretly arranged for DNA tests for both boys, and the results came back like a punch to the gut. He wasn't their father. Ben was shattered by the revelation. Despite everything, he confronted Emily, hoping for some explanation or resolution. When Emily broke down, admitting her mistakes and apologizing, Ben found himself in an impossible position. His love for her and the boys was so deep that he couldn't just walk away. He made Emily promise that it would never happen again, and they agreed to never bring it up and to continue raising the boys as if they were his own. Things were tense and awkward, but they were managing somehow. Then the bombshell. Emily was pregnant again. Ben, already stretched to his limit, demanded to know who the father was. When Emily confessed it was Henry, Ben couldn't bear the thought of staying any longer. He couldn't stand to watch her and the kids knowing the truth, so he left. I was in disbelief when Ben told me all this. I couldn't accept it until I confronted Emily myself. Her tears and apologies confirmed the painful truth. Ben hadn't lied. I was so angry and hurt that I lashed out at Emily, calling her the worst person I had ever met. The betrayal was too much, not just by Emily but by Henry, my husband. I left Emily's house feeling betrayed and heartbroken. As soon as I got home, I threw Henry's belongings out the house. A wedding gift from my parents was mine, and I couldn't bear to have him there anymore. The pain of betrayal by the people closest to me was overwhelming, and I needed to reclaim some sense of control and dignity by removing him from my home and my life, refusing to let Henry back into my life or my home. I made it clear through a text that I'd be sending him divorce papers. There was no room for conversation or reconciliation. He had made his choices, and now he had to live with them. I told him he could focus on being a father to his children and their mother. It's been a grueling 2 years, a constant reminder of the betrayal by the two people I once thought would never hurt me. Every day was a battle with the pain they caused. Henry didn't give up easily. He tried reaching out, showing up at my workplace, trying to find a way to make amends. But the damage was done, and no words or actions could erase the betrayal. Eventually, he came to understand the depth of his mistake and signed the divorce papers. As for Emily, I hadn't seen or heard from her since that day. It was as if she vanished from my life. But then, out of nowhere, Emily called. My initial instinct was to ignore it, to keep guarding my heart against more pain, yet curiosity won over. I answered. Emily had left town, but not for the reasons I might have assumed. She was seeking better treatment for her lung cancer. Back when we were all still close, we learned of her diagnosis. She was in stage 2, and the doctors were optimistic about her treatment options. With everyone's support, it didn't seem as daunting then, but with the fallout, Emily was left to fight her battle alone, making it all the more challenging. Hearing this from Emily, learning about her struggle and isolation, it brought a mix of emotions. Anger, betrayal, but also a reminder of the person she was before everything fell apart. It was a lot to process, a complex web of feelings about friendship, betrayal, and the harsh realities of life's trials. So there's this really sad part of my story. Emily, my one-time BFF, hit me with some heavy news. She didn't think she had much time left to be with her kids because she was really sick. She had just had a baby girl, who was actually Henry's, my husband's kid. Yeah, it's complicated. Emily asked me if I could look after her kids because Ben, the guy we thought was the dad, wouldn't be able to love them like his own. I was pretty upset and just told her to focus on getting better. Then I hung up. Fast forward a few weeks, and I get this invitation that just breaks my heart. It was to Emily's funeral. I felt awful, like the world's worst friend because I hadn't forgiven her before she passed away. But then I thought about what Emily would have wanted, and I knew she would have wanted someone to take care of her kids. So I decided to step up and take care of them. The boys I already knew and loved, and now the baby girl too. Now these kids, they call me Mom. And yeah, sometimes when I look at them, I remember all the messy stuff that happened, the hurt and the betrayal, but I just can't let them suffer for things they had nothing to do with. So here I am, being their mom, and it's got me wondering, was I wrong for not forgiving Emily sooner? Update. Life after Emily's bombshell was like navigating through a reality TV show I never signed up for. There I was, single, juggling my event company, and now suddenly playing mom to 3 kids with a backstory that could give soap operas a run for their money. Just as the kids and I started finding our rhythm, the universe decided I hadn't had enough drama. Enter Henry's attempt at a grand comeback. Picture this. I'm at a wedding expo showcasing my company when Henry appears as if conjured by my most dreaded thoughts. He's there, flowers in hand, wearing that look that once made me swoon, only now it just made me want to hurl the nearest wedding centerpiece at him. He's spewing apologies, talking about therapy and change, but I wasn't buying any of it. I sent him packing, but not before a scene erupted, captured by every smartphone in the vicinity. By evening, our drama was trending because, of course, everyone loves a scandal. As if dealing with Henry wasn't enough, Ben resurfaced, grappling with his own demons and suddenly wanting to be part of the kids' lives. I was torn between my instinct to protect the kids from further upheaval and the realization that they deserve to know their biological father, no matter how complicated the narrative. In the midst of this, my company faced a crisis. A major client bailed, citing the public drama as bad for business, leaving me scrambling to keep my dream afloat. It felt like every part of my life was imploding, and I found myself questioning if I could really handle it all. But then life threw us a lifeline. The kids, who'd been struggling with the transition and the loss of Emily, started to show signs of healing. Now on to the next story. Story 2. Before we start, if you're enjoying this video so far, please consider liking and subscribing to the channel. Now let's continue. Am I wrong for suggesting calling off the wedding because she thinks the prenup is unfair? My girlfriend, 26F, and myself, M24, have just found out that she is pregnant. She is adamant about not wanting to have a child out of wedlock, so we have been discussing getting married. We've been together for 3.5 years prior to finding out about the baby. We had only talked about marriage a little bit. I know she wants to get married badly, but I'm kind of on the other side of the fence. I'm not 100% against it, but definitely not eager, let alone desperate, to get married for multiple reasons. For one, my brother just recently got taken to the cleaners by his ex-wife. He pays her like $10,000 a month in addition to losing some of his properties, and that whole situation terrifies me. I've never really seen what a marriage provides that makes that risk worth it to me. It's just the same thing as being together how we are currently, but giving the state permission to be in our relationship. However, now that she's pregnant, I've been more open to it just because I know how much it means to her. So we've started this process, and I'm slowly realizing that I may have bitten off more than I want to chew. While me and my girlfriend love each other very much and are compatible in pretty much every way, our ideas about marriage, the wedding, etc., seem to be a little different. For starters, for the wedding, I was thinking we each pick some of our closest people, maybe 10 or so each, the number can be a little flexible, and go get married on an island or beach, stay for a week or two or something cool like that so we can have fun and enjoy it. She pretty much wants the exact opposite. A massive wedding in a big venue. Now, I don't see anything wrong with that type of wedding. It just seems like such a colossal waste of resources to invite every person we know when we could, instead of fun for a week or two, then get married on the beach with our closest people. It doesn't necessarily have to be the beach. I'm flexible, but I think you get the idea I'm going for versus the idea she's going for, a completely different school of thought. She basically wants to invite every single person she knows. Like, I've looked at her list and she's got friends she hasn't seen in years, third cousins, literally everyone. To me, if I'm going to spend a boatload of money, we should do it for ourselves, not people we barely know. We've been talking about compromises and making slow progress on that end, but we were getting there. She knew prior to getting married I would require a prenup. I make about 4x her salary and own property and plan to acquire more. I had my lawyer draft up a prenup, and she has her own lawyer reviewing it. This is where we came to an impasse. Her lawyer believed the prenup was unfair, and we've been going back and forth making changes. I've made some concessions, but I'm kind of at a point where I don't want to make any more. While I admit the prenup is definitely ironclad, I think it's fair considering the situation. I'm taking all the risk. Why would I continue to concede on things me and my lawyer both believe are fair? So recently we got into a minor argument over wedding stuff in general regarding the prenup, wedding, and I was just like, maybe we should just keep things how they are. Of course, she flipped. We've cooled down since, and she says she still wants to make this happen, but that I need to be more open to compromise. I feel like, given the situation, I've compromised more than I already should have. I talked to my brother about it, and he told me I've compromised more than enough and to hold firm. In the worst case, you stay GFBF, which is realistically probably better anyways. My sister disagrees and says I'm being a jerk for not working with her more. The way I see it, why would I risk everything I've worked for when I'm not even getting the wedding I want nor the financial protection I want just so I can say I'm married? There's just very few tangible benefits I'd be getting in relation to the risk. Okay, I feel like I made her look bad in the original post. 1. The price of the wedding isn't the problem. The cost of the wedding I want versus what she wants are damn near the same amount. It's just the things we want to use that amount for. 2. I don't think she's maliciously going after me, and I do see her as the person I want to spend the rest of my life with. We were planning on moving in together regardless. However, like I mentioned, the prenup is ironclad. I'm not going to go into the details of the prenup for obvious reasons, but I will say it probably favors me. The language she wants in the prenup leaves more interpretation to judge. It's nothing necessarily crazy, and for my understanding, somewhat common in prenups versus the language I want is very precise with things I have specifically outlined. Regardless of the circumstance, She wouldn't be screwed or anything and would still probably be doing better financially speaking than she is now. She already does okay for herself, but the prenup is about as strong as it can be while still being reliably enforceable. Another thing I want to make clear, it's not that I don't want to get married. The idea of marriage and being married to someone you love is cool. I'm not against it like I may have made it sound. If anything, I may be the paranoid one. My parents are divorced, both my brothers got divorced, my cousins, etc. I just know how we feel now about each other may not be the case forever, as sad as that may be. In the case that something happens, I don't want to give up a large portion of my assets. I would always support the kid and make sure he or she needs it. It's my child. 3. This isn't a problem with the relationship. If we don't get married, we'll stay together and raise the kid. It's not totally unexpected. I was pulling out, but it happens. We both acknowledged the risk of getting pregnant, and we were okay with the possibility. I never promised her marriage if that was the case. In fact, in the first year of dating, I told her I didn't plan on getting married at all back when we weren't that serious. I say all this to say this isn't something that I've been expecting, and she had never made this much of a fuss about getting married before now. For another thing, I noticed a lot of comments are assuming she would be pregnant at the wedding. We would wait until after the birth. When I said she doesn't want to have a baby out of wedlock, I didn't mean it that literally. Like, if we got married a couple of months or a year after, it wouldn't be a big deal to her. My mistake. 5. We are in the process of moving in together and are going to raise the baby together regardless of the outcome of this dispute. Now, I know this is where a bunch of Reddit people call me naive, but this possibility has already been discussed. We do not have any intention of raising the baby in a dual household, and if we did, I would have no problem paying child support. 6. More details about the prenup. Yes, it's ironclad, but it's not unfair to answer some of the questions people are asking. Yes, it guarantees she will have a place to live if we were to get a divorce, and she has guaranteed alimony for a certain period as well. Additional information. I did one more look through of this thread and I saw all your comments. As much as I would love to respond to each one, I sadly don't have the time, but I'll answer some of your questions that I remember seeing in the comments. I can tell you don't understand finances or how legal documents work very well, so I'll try to break everything down in a simplistic way you can understand. 1. Yes, a divorce is way costlier than child support. You keep asking for sources, but a lot of this stuff should be common sense, especially for someone with as much life experience as you, especially considering you're a divorced single mom yourself. I would think you would have some personal experience anyways. I'll break this down with simple numbers to make it easy for you to comprehend. Let's say she were to get $2,000 a month in child support. The average in CA is $430 and usually tops out at $800 according to Google, but I wanted to make this example fun for you and leave no room for you to twist the situation. $2,000 monthly support x 12 months in a year equals $24,000. $24,000 x 18 years of support equals $432,000. Now, in a divorce, things like property are on the table, so let's say she gets one property, extremely unrealistic. She would definitely get more, but again, just trying to help you understand, so keeping it as simple as I can so you don't get confused. Valued at $500,000, again, on the low end. Most properties in California go for way more. Let's just say you're not going to find a decent house for $500,000 in California. Now, if you still don't understand, I'll spell it out. Just losing one valuable property is more of a financial loss than child support ever would be, and in most cases you're not just losing one property. If you have multiple, that's not to even mention child support is spread over years, whereas you could lose hundreds of thousands in value in a single day. The losses are in no way comparable, and I'm genuinely curious about the mental gymnastics you could be doing to believe that, or if it's you just don't understand basic finances. Either way, I hope my explanation was able to educate you a little bit. 2. You don't have to get married to have a baby. The fact that you keep implying that it is morally wrong when the majority of babies are born out of wedlock is showing your ignorance about reality. 3. As you should know, prenups deemed unfair are often thrown out. My lawyer literally told me any prenup we drew up without alimony would likely be tossed. How is that for a source? For, I think we are compatible as roommates because, while yes, she doesn't live with me, she probably stays at my house 4 to 5 nights out of the week, if not more. Some weeks, half her clothes are over here. The majority of the food she makes is over here. Point being, Us living together is not something foreign to us, as you like to make it seem. 5. Yes, the verdict is totally unanimous. That's why you have 30+ comments arguing with people in the comments, because it's so unanimous based on the fact that you have like 30 separate comments full of long paragraphs arguing with everyone on a situation that you have no part in. You clearly have some bitterness because the situation resonates with you, and for that, I'm sorry. I do hope you can find a way to heal and get past your trauma. Best of luck. Comment where OP has replied. Actually, he did not. He specifically said with a prenup she would only probably be doing slightly better than okay, which is how she's doing pre-baby with a job. Doesn't sound like he's interested in putting in the duties as primary caregiver and would probably balk at paying for a caregiver, so she'd end up way worse if the marriage ended, and that's how he wants it to be. OP. I would happily pay for a caregiver if she wanted to continue working. As of right now, she said she would prefer to stay home, but she said she may change her mind after the birth. I am totally fine with either option. Update. So my last post ended up getting way more attention than I anticipated, and a lot of you guys hit me with advice and asking for an update. Thanks to everyone who reached out with advice. A couple of you guys' stories and pieces of advice are what ended up helping me stand firm on the decision. I tried to respond to some of you, but apologies if I didn't get to you. Also, not sure about the rules about updates, so if this isn't allowed, sorry mods, just delete it. First, I'll answer some of the common questions I saw throughout the thread. I realized if I don't specify something, everyone will just fill in the blanks themselves, which I guess I can't be too mad at. 1. Yes, we are both aware of what birth control is and how to use it. For the first 2 years of our relationship, she was on the pill, but told me she wanted to get off of it because it was messing with her hormones. She said I could use condoms if I wanted to, but that didn't last for too long. We both knew and accepted this could potentially happen. 2. Yes, I said she doesn't live with me, but I should have provided more context. Yes, she doesn't technically live with me, but she primarily stays at my place. She has her own apartment, but sleeps at my place minimum 4 to 5 nights a week, sometimes even more. Most of her clothes are over here. The food she makes is over here, etc. I think you get my point. 3. For everyone that keeps saying abortion, she's had the option for that the entire time. I've made that clear to her the whole time. She is choosing this. We live in California, so it's not like it's illegal or anything. When she asked my opinion, I told her I preferred she keep it, but if she wanted an abortion, I would get her one and support her decision regardless. She chose to keep it. I think those were people's main questions. Update. We ended up having a discussion about the whole marriage thing where we both were able to get our opinions or concerns out there. Just me and her, no lawyers, no anything. It was really helpful because it let both of us get our concerns out there. We ended up agreeing that the whole marriage/prenup situation was too stressful right now while we were dealing with so many things. Pregnancy, moving in, etc. So we agreed that for now, we would focus on the baby and put the marriage conversation on hold for now. I agreed I would be open to discussing it again in a couple of years once everything has settled down, and she ended up being satisfied with that. That was last week, and as of a couple of days ago, we finished moving the rest of her stuff to my place. Her lease ends at the end of this month, and all that is left in the apartment is some furniture she plans to give to her family. Since this is my last post about this situation, I'll provide some clarity about why I didn't want to compromise any further on the prenup. The language that my lawyer and I chose to use was very definitive about what would happen in the event of a divorce. On the other hand, hers was not. Again, still not going into details, but I'll say what my lawyer told me. He basically said that if I were to concede the language any further, he could no longer give me a guarantee on what I stand to lose. He said at that point, I would pretty much be at the mercy of the judge's interpretation, meaning anything could happen, especially considering the fact that we live in CA. For me, that would defeat the entire purpose of the prenup, which is why I wasn't willing to concede on it. I actually was willing to concede on the actual wedding plan, but I just couldn't imagine letting a court system that is historically pretty unfair to men have the final say over my assets. I assured my girlfriend that in the event that we separated, I would make sure she was still taken care of, which made her feel better about the whole situation as well. I don't think my problem was necessarily the commitment to her. It was more the fact that someone else would have the final say over everything in the scenario where things go wrong versus myself having the final say, which, as many of you pointed out, means I'm just not ready for marriage. Comment where OP has replied, sure, okay, so long as you understand what your stance will engender. Your GFBF mama will understand that she is largely on her own. Certainly if she has any sense she will understand that she must be very prudent with her finances. This means that she needs to work continuously to protect herself. I do hope that you've considered what lump sum to transfer to GF to reimburse her for the career hit this pregnancy will cause due to diminished energy, having to take on less challenging assignments, distrust by superiors. If the baby is born with special needs, she knows that she cannot be the one to sacrifice her work to take them to medical care, despite it being the most healthy option. This baby cannot be breastfed since the time and energy would eat away at GF's work energies unless you plan to reimburse her. You need to prepare to be the parent who stays home whenever the child is ill. You need to prepare to attend the various appointments, meetings, school events, play dates, shop for the birthday presents, throw the parties. Your GF cannot afford to jeopardize her financial security since her resources are less than yours. Men feel they've been screwed by women out to take their money. I just don't think they've calculated all the innumerable small financial hits those opportunistic women took during the course of rearing their children. Certainly, if no children or joint efforts to build a business are involved, then I support myself is perfectly equitable. P. She's not on her own. I pay for pretty much anything she needs. What a ridiculous, out-of-touch thing to say, lol. She also is choosing not to work. If she wanted to continue with her career, I told her we could get a nanny or daycare, whatever. She is adamant about being a stay-at-home mom, which is cool. I totally support it, but you phrase this entire thing like I'm making her do this or making her have the kid. I don't discount the things she will have to give up/sacrifice. I'll always make sure she's taken care of, but I don't think I should be at the mercy of the government or the courts in the event something goes wrong. And of course, I'll do my part in raising the kid. I feel like I've made that clear. Now on to the next story. Story 3. My father-in-law treated me like dirt for being poor. After his heart attack, he confessed a dark secret from his past that explains everything. I 28F, never thought that I would come to narrate this here on Reddit, but here goes. My husband, Marcus, and I have been married for 3 years now, and it has been one big roller coaster of emotions, mainly due to my father-in-law, Robert. Marcus and I were college buddies, classmates, both of us were business majors, but we moved in different circles. He was the popular guy, always surrounded by an entourage of friends, while I was more of a nose-to-the-grindstone type, working part-time to help finance college. We had a few classes together over the years, but though we were friendly, I really didn't bond beyond casual small talk. We lost contact because after college, I started at the bottom of the marketing ladder while Marcus landed a job in a top firm based on his family's social capital. It was only 3 years after college, at the wedding of a mutual friend, Sarah, that I saw him again. I can recall that day so easily. I was helping Sarah with some last-minute decorations when Marcus walked in. He looked different, more mature, more confident. We started to talk, and it was as if no time had passed. We danced, we laughed, and by the end of the night we had exchanged numbers. As our relationship grew from then on, Marcus seems to be into just about everything that I am passionate about, as well as into whatever things that I would like to achieve in the future. A year after we decided to live together, and after a year we dated one weekend at the seashore, and that's when he asked me the question of all time. I was on cloud 9, but my happiness did not last for too long. Things went haywire right from the moment Marcus took me to meet his parents, Robert and Linda, 60F, for a kickoff. The moment I stepped into their posh house, I felt like a fish out of water. Robert had achieved his success as a restaurateur and was giving me the once-over in the most scrutinizing way. During dinner, Robert grilled me about my background. As soon as I mentioned my parents, a mother, Sarah, 55 years old, working as a cashier in one of the stores downtown, and a father, Mike, 57 years old, working as a construction worker, he turned aloof. I did try to bring him into conversation with me about my job in marketing, but he wasn't very interested. He turned to Marcus and started talking about the family business, really shutting me out of the conversation. Our relationship was balancing on closer shores each day, and Robert's behavior was deteriorating consistently. He used to pass comments on the kind of dress I used to wear, always trying to point out that I looked cheap at family functions. Suddenly, he would forget to involve me in a conversation or game. When in Spain on a family holiday, he gave us a small, basic room while the rest of them took the luxurious suites. Marcus picked up on some of this behavior and challenged his dad about it, but Robert was a master at gaslighting, convincing Marcus that I was being too sensitive, reading things into the situation. This led to arguments between Marcus and me as he really wanted to believe his father couldn't be so deliberately cruel. It all came to a head at our wedding. Despite Marcus's protests, Robert insisted on giving us a speech. There was a beautiful moment that should have been joyful, but it turned the tables. Robert's speech was one huge bundle of backhanded compliments and veiled insults. He said that I cleaned up nicely for the wedding. It must be really unusual since he had never seen me look that good. He said he was very surprised that I could afford such a nice dress. He knew better since Marcus and I paid for the wedding. It was a clincher, though, when he raised his glass and toasted to Marcus and his bride. Let's hope he had the sense to get a good prenup. There was a deathly hush, and I felt my face redden with mortification. Marcus was so angry that he had a huge fight with his father. Robert apologized, saying it was all in jest and that I was overreacting, but the damage had been done. From that day on, family events turned sour. Robert kept on his tirade about events in my life, covering them with maybe a humorous intent or under the guise of innocent discourse. Linda, Marcus's mom, took to playing peacemaker, but seldom acted against her husband. But Marcus has been very supportive, and it truly seems to affect him. He feels divided between his love for me and his parents. This has led to quite a few fights about how we should handle this, and most times Marcus just said we should ignore his father's behavior and, for the good of family, maintain the false peace. I tried everything possible to win Robert's approval. I've offered to help in the kitchen during family dinners, brought thoughtful gifts for the holidays, and even volunteered at one of the charity events his restaurant supports. I thought that when he saw how hardworking and devoted I was trying to make something of myself, maybe then he would accept me, but nothing seems to work. The fight last weekend took the matter even further. We were at a family barbecue to celebrate Linda's birthday. The day had been going relatively well, with Robert mostly ignoring me, really trying hard to not insult me. And as the evening wore on and the drinks flowed, Robert's true colors came out. He cornered Marcus and started in on him loudly about our finances, inferring to everyone with an earshot that surely I must be bleeding Marcus dry. I sure hope you are watching your money, son. He'd say loud enough for everybody to hear. These types, you never know what they can be. So sneaky gold diggers. Before Marcus could answer, Robert turned toward me and said, I hope you're not planning on quitting your job now that you've married into money. We wouldn't want you getting too comfortable, would we? After all, you're used to having to work for a living. The party turned very quiet then, and I could feel all the eyes on me with pity mixed with an uncomfortable look on their faces. I couldn't bear it either. I mumbled some excuse and left the party, tears streaming down my face as I rushed to our car. We had a huge fight in the car. He accused me of being too sensitive, telling me to learn to take his father's jokes. Shocked by his words, how could he still defend his father after what had happened? I told him that this was getting tiring. I was not ready to be disrespected, and if he was incapable of defending me, then maybe we are not meant to be together. The drive back home was full of silence, with tension lying thick in the atmosphere. Now Marcus is sleeping in the guest room, and we barely talk. His parents have been calling and texting endlessly, asking why we did such a rude thing at the party. Marcus wants me to offer my apologies for peace's sake, but in this case, I don't think I should be the one to apologize. I love Marcus, I really do. Things are just fine between us, too. He is a nice person and so supportive, too. And we share the same ideas and dreams for what we want for our future. We have talked about starting a family, buying a house, and settling into life together. How the heck can we do that with this cloud hanging over our heads? I have tried to understand Marcus's position. He is quite understandable, though it is easy for him to get caught between his wife and his parents. But at what stage does standing by silently become an equal to condoning his father's behavior? I can't help but think, though, that my parents have been together I don't know how long and are no better off. My parents were always supportive of me and accepted Marcus in an open and understanding way. Having them now, they made me see the importance of working hard, being honest, and treating everyone with respect, no matter who they are. I wish Robert could see those virtues in me, not just notice my working-class roots. Please, I don't know what I shall do anymore. Must I stick to my guns that Marcus must fully support me in confronting his father, or might it backfire? I don't want to take a step that can distance me from Marcus, probably shaking my marriage. I don't think I can bear it. Am I just overreacting? Should I learn to cope with Robert's behavior for the sake of my marriage? Or do I really need to draw the line at this time? I really feel lost and could use some advice. How do I move with this situation without losing either myself or my marriage? Update. It's been about 2 weeks since my last post, and I wanted to update you all on what's happened. Most importantly, I want to thank everyone for their supportive comments and advice. They made a big difference in terms of understanding the situation and really gave me the courage to make a move. A couple of days later, and a lot of tension had passed, Marcus and I really talked things through. I decided to show him my original post with all the answers. As he read through everything, I could see the realization dawning on his face. He said he was in full denial about his dad's behavior, and that he's sorry for not firmly standing up for me. We talked for hours about our childhoods and how they made us view things. Marcus opened up about having grown up with Robert as a father. He told me a bit of stories of the great pressure Robert put on him for success, how nothing ever seemed to be good enough. It gave me a glimpse into why Marcus would have such a hard time standing up to his father. I opened up more about my own upbringing. I told Marcus about those Christmases when my folks would have to give us each just one small present, but how the whole house was still bursting with love and laughter. I talked about watching my dad come home exhausted from long days at the construction site, but still finding the energy to help me with my homework. I wanted Marcus to understand that while we may not have had lots of money, my family gave me something much more rich, unconditional love and support. Afterwards, we agreed we had to face his parents. Marcus said that we should have them at our place for a dinner. I was reluctant to this idea to avoid being embarrassed by Robert Moore all over again, but I agreed. And so the next few days were spent in preparation for the dinner. Marcus and I worked on the menu, which I insisted had to be lavish without being overtly so. I wanted to prove to Robert that yes, I could belong to his world, but no, I had not gone that far from my roots. Lunch was to be held over the weekend, and indeed it was so intense to say the least. The arrival of Robert and Linda was enough for me to realize that we were already tensed. We passed small talk with the appetizers, leaving Marcus to steer the direction of the conversation to neutral areas. It was by the time we went into the main course before Marcus cleared his throat and addressed his parents. He started, not so gladly, by informing them of their conduct of late, or rather Robert's, which affected all our relationship. He might have spoken amicably, though his tone was assertive as he made them understand that we are just going to minimize our contact with them if they continue treating me with disrespect. Really, it didn't take long for Robert to go on the defensive. "You've turned Marcus against us," he said. Once again, though it didn't work, Marcus wasn't going anywhere. He cited examples of Robert's abusive behavior, most notably the wedding speech and the recent barbecue incident. As Marcus told all, I looked at Linda's face. She truly seemed to take it in as a shock, since her eyes got wider and wider with every example Marcus mentioned. She had not really realized the extent of Robert's behavior. Finally, she turned toward me as her eyes filled with tears, expressing sorrow for not having spoken sooner. But even Robert didn't give up on me. He kept telling me he had always treated me fairly. I was just too sensitive. And finally, I had had enough. So I took a deep breath and looked Robert in the eye. It was what I was going to say about how his constant poking and joking made me feel, how he put me in questioning my worth when we started. I continued on how entering a room made me feel unwelcome and already on edge, just preparing to be defended from the next insult or backhanded compliment. So then I decided to change tactics. Instead of all the defensive arguing, I started boasting about my people and my background. I told him how my parents used to toil day and night to make us have 3 decent meals and save some money for my college. I related fascinating anecdotes of the lessons learned from them, of how hard work and honesty would eventually pay off, how decent living standards without discrimination or distinction were every person's right. I told him that in spite of the lifestyle he despised, I'd achieved what I become through hard work. I told him that I financed my college education by scholarship and through part-time jobs I'd been into, which later boosted me into a successful career in marketing. To him, I might even not have been born with money, but I was raised with old-fashioned values that money couldn't buy anyhow. As I continued speaking, I saw Robert's face change. He looked amazed, like he had not seen me before. Many times he wanted to interrupt, but Marcus did not allow him. He harshly told Robert to, for once, just listen to what I had to say. By the end of the night, Robert had not yet apologized, but was a lot more subdued. Linda, however, was almost in tears before they left. She hugged me hard and said in a whisper, "I'm sorry, and things will be different." We were literally drained by the moment they left. We felt relieved. He told me how proud he was of me for standing up for myself, and I told him how much it meant to me that he had my back that night. For the first time in weeks, we spent in the same bed, holding each other close. Later that day, we both received text messages from Linda again. She apologized, but this time she said she was feeling ashamed that the behavior of Robert was allowed to continue for so long. She further requested for a lunch meeting with the two of us alone. I had met Linda yesterday in a small cafe. She seemed a person more open and vulnerable. She shared a few stories of her early marriage to Robert and how his controlling behavior had slowly started to isolate her from her own family and friends. She admitted that she had been afraid to stand up to Robert for years, always making excuses for his behavior. She needed my aid to confront Robert to make him learn of his mistakes so they can rebuild their relationship with us. She also told me that she practically talked Robert into approaching a family counselor with her so that they could settle all their issues. I'm quite optimistic about what's happening with Linda, but still cautious with Robert. Marcus and I have agreed to take things slow and keep our boundaries tight around his parents. We decided to limit our visits for now and always present a united front. We realize it's a start, but it's going to be a long road to completion. We are also contemplating couples counseling because this situation has raised some issues in our own relationship. We need to make sure we're both on the same page as we move forward. I will let you know about the developments. Thank you once more for all your encouraging words and advice. It's been tough, but I feel like we are finally going in the right direction. Update 2. Well, it's been a month since the last update. A lot has been going on, interesting to say the least. Well, after our dinner confrontation and my lunch with Linda, Robert went very silent on us. He would text occasionally to check in, but he was generally silent. Marcus was uneasy, but I found it a nice reprieve from the tension. During that time, Marcus and I worked on our relationship. We first decided to go see a couples therapist, which has been really helpful. We worked on our communication and resolved a few issues that the behavior of Robert was manifesting. It wasn't easy, but we're both committed to making our marriage stronger. Last week, everything changed. Marcus had a call from Linda in tears. Apparently, Robert had a health scare with some minor heart attack. He was all right, but the experience had really shaken him up. Marcus made a dash for the hospital, and I made up my mind to be with him for support anyhow. We reached the hospital to find Linda sitting by Robert's bedside. Robert looked pale and smaller somehow, now hooked up to a variety of machines, a major contrast to the big, imposing figure he usually cut. When he saw us, something in Robert's expression changed. He sent Linda and Marcus away from us. I felt my stomach turn with nervousness, but I stood my ground with him, remembering the power I discovered that lay within, telling him no. Robert began to speak with a gruff voice. He said, lying there was so much time to think, though I began a feeling that it was all unfair right from the start. I'd let my own prejudices get in the way of my judgment. Then he did something I never expected. He opened up about his own past. Robert had a tough father, one who had impressed upon him that status and wealth were most important. He told stories of growing up poor, the horrible shame of wearing second-hand clothes to school and watching his mother work herself to the bone to keep food on the table. As he climbed that social ladder, he'd assured himself of a couple real sureties that the same pitfalls would bypass his offspring, at least one of which his own visage forever marked out whatever heyday that should have been. He went on speaking, and gradually I came to see Robert in a very different light, far from the picture I had once had of the cruel, domineering father-in-law, to the very flawed man, someone very much a product of his experiences. It didn't excuse what he had done, but it did make it a little bit more understandable. He apologized for everything. The snide remarks, the wedding speech, the belittling. He said he finally realized that in trying to protect Marcus from what he perceived to be a threat against his lifestyle, he had almost driven his son away. He admitted that seeing Marcus rushing to the hospital with me by his side made him realize what really mattered in life. I won't lie, I was a bit skeptical at first. A near-death experience makes people say things they really do not mean. But the more we talked, the more actual remorse I could see in his eyes. I told Robert that I did appreciate his apology, but rebuilding our shattered trust needed time. He nodded in agreement and told me he understood, and he was now ready to do whatever it would take to make things right again. Then, when Marcus and Linda returned, Robert called Marcus to sit down. He apologized to him as well for putting him in the middle, and he realized that he did not respect his choices either. Marcus was visibly moved, and for the first time in years, I saw them hug without any underlying tension. Ever since the hospital day, things have never been the same. Robert was led out of the hospital a couple of days after, and he's been making efforts adjusting. He went as far as inviting me to dinner last weekend and making extraordinary efforts to be nice to me. He even inquired about my parents and seemed generally interested in listening to me tell him about them. This has been very supportive for Linda, and I've seen her getting more courageous with the self-expression of her views around Robert. They have also started seeing a family counselor together, and Linda said it has been helping them work through so much. Marcus appears, if anything, more at peace than I have seen him in years. He has been pulled between his wife and his parents, but is released from that stress. We still go to couples counseling. It has helped tremendously in bridging back our communication and trust. Me, I'm only cautiously optimistic. It's the one where I realize that there's no easy way out all the time now, and years of hurt can't neither be made up for in just a night, but also willing to give Robert a chance. For now, we just take it each day as it comes, establishing healthier and open communication quite well. Never thought a health scare would make this possible, but I am grateful for the new chapter in our family dynamics. I will keep you posted on developments. Update 3. It's been 6 months since my last update. It has been a roller coaster, but thank goodness the positive changes to health that I spoke of in my last post have, for the most part, continued. Robert's consistency has actually always been in the attempt to compensate and get to that place where he wins the confidence of Maria. He made an effort to know me beyond being Marcus's wife. We had spent time sitting with him, talking and having one-on-ones with people where he asked me about my work, hobbies, and family. He has even shown interest in meeting my parents, which has been a significant step toward reconciliation. We had a parent dinner last month, and I was somewhat worried about how it would all play out, given the picture I have in my mind from what I know of their history and backgrounds. The evening started off a bit awkwardly, with everybody trying to be on their best behavior, but as the night went on, things began to relax. Suddenly, Robert and Dad connected as they discussed construction work. Robert started to talk about his days as a busboy and dishwasher in restaurants before he owned his own place. It was satisfying, said my dad, to see a building put up from the ground floor, generally to completion. They even exchanged numbers to meet up for coffee sometime. And my mom and Linda were also getting along famously. They found common ground with their experiences as mothers and both knowing what it means to be an understanding wife with their husbands who are just too involved in business matters. At the end of the night, I was glad to see them laughing at each other all throughout the evening. Marcus was beaming with a pleasure that could not be hidden. He hugged me tight after everyone left and thanked me for not giving up on his parents. Linda's self-assurance has been getting better lately. She contacted some former friends and started volunteering at women's shelters. It is wonderful to see her. We meet for lunch very often, and we really have developed a nice friendship with each other. Marcus and I are doing fine. The decrease in family stress makes us focus on what we want for us in the future. We are even talking about starting our own family soon, which before we wanted to put off because of the tension in our families. We even started to look for houses in the area for both our jobs and close to both sets of parents. However, all has not been smooth. There has sometimes been a return to old habits. Robert sometimes makes remarks that can be considered to be insensitive, but I realize that they are not deliberate now. In such situations, I have learned to handle the matter calmly at the time, and Robert has been very accommodative to such comments and feedback. We have attended several family therapy sessions as a couple that felt quite cleansing in terms of dealing with some big issues and setting new, healthier patterns of communication. This also was quite tough because it also touched on quite a few issues of past hurt and misunderstanding, but at the same time it was very healing. My wife and I also resumed our couples counseling. We learned a tremendous amount through the process about communication and support toward one another in tough times. We are now stronger than ever. Generally speaking, I'm grateful for the distances we have gone through. It's been quite painstaking, and yet so much is left to be done. Finally, I feel like I belong in that family, and I'm not an outsider. The coming month is Robert's birthday, and for the first time, I am positive that I want to come to another gathering. Thank you also very much for all the support along the way. You prove to be a priceless guide for me at this point and will be in much demand for taking up those challenges in life. Rest assured, I believe with firm certainty that we now possess the tools and are willing to work through problems in this family together. Now on to the next story. Story 4. Am I wrong for not inviting my parents to my wedding and anyone from that family? Me, 27, and my husband, 28, are going to get married in January. On his side, his entire family is invited, but on mine, only my maternal aunt and her husband are going. When my parents and the rest of my family found out about this, they made a big fuss and they treated me horribly. But I am justified in not wanting them on my special day. Context. I was the first daughter, granddaughter, and niece. I was everyone's darling until the other babies arrived. When I turned 8, my little sister was born. My grandparents and my mother stopped treating me in a special way. If my sister broke something, they never scolded her, but if I said something mean to my sister, I was punished. Once, she even broke my glasses and I was punished. My father, on the other hand, was present for a while, but then disappeared. He was constant with the money, but not with the visits or calls. When I turned 11, I was closer to my maternal aunt, who lived miles away from me, than to my uncles, grandparents, and mother, who lived in my house. That aunt, who is 9 years older than me, is my mother's half-sister, and although she only saw her on Christmas, birthdays, and holidays, we talked on the phone twice a day. When I was 12 and she was 21, I stayed with her all summer, even though my mom didn't believe my aunt could take care of me. They were the best 2 months of my life. After my vacation, I studied more and had very good behavior at school with the intention that they would let me go to see her again. But everything was ruined when my grades in mathematics began to go down. Although I tried hard, and my aunt gave me classes and even paid for a tutor, my grades didn't improve that year. My aunt visited me in the middle of the school year and went to see what was happening at school with my mother. That was when my teacher said that I was not paying attention in class because I was very loving with a girl. My mother and aunt were amazed and asked the teacher why he said that. The teacher argued that I was a lesbian and that classmate was my girlfriend, and as an institution I could not accept that. It was a religious school. My aunt made a fuss and threatened to sue them for discrimination, but my mother believed the teacher. When they got home, she hit me and exposed me in front of her entire family. I was not a lesbian and that girlfriend was a friend. My aunt got in the way and confronted my mother. It was then that my mother kicked me out of the house and told my aunt if she defended me so much, I should move in with her because I was ashamed to my mother and that I was not going to go through that with the neighbors. My aunt didn't think twice and took me with her. She called my father and told him about the situation. They both filed a complaint and made it clear that I would stay with her. My grandmother, who lived with my aunt, also disowned me for supposedly being a lesbian, but my aunt, who owned the house, kicked her out of the house. From that day on, my aunt and her husband, who at that time was just her boyfriend, took care of me like if I were their daughter. When I turned 15, my uncles legally adopted me. They paid for my university and also during all that time, they made me go to the psychologist. I must say that all this affected me too much, but the love they gave me helped me a lot. For me, they are my parents and not my uncles now. When my relatives found out that I was going to marry a man, they came to apologize to me, and I accepted their apology. Even so, I did not want to continue in contact with them, but they believed that with the apology, they were more than invited to my wedding. 2 weeks ago, my mother and my grandmother came to my dress fitting. I was totally outraged. They had not been invited, and I kicked them out of the place. They were outraged and they started insulting me and my husband. I told them that I didn't want them in my life, that I only excused them for mental health reasons, but they were nothing of mine anymore. Despite all that, 3 days ago, one of my dad's cousins called me asking about the dress code and if she accepted children. I told her that she, like all the members of that family, were not invited. She was outraged, and a few minutes later, she called me. My father was asking who he was going to turn me in for. I answered that my father, my uncle, would do it, and he called me in 1,000 ways. I simply cut off the call. Am I really that bad? My mom tells me that if I don't want those people at my wedding, she supports me, but my mother-in-law says that family is family, no matter what has happened. Comment where OP has replied, "You are doing the right thing. These people are trash." Sure, they apologize to you, but they still feel it was appropriate to disown you and treat you like that because they're homophobic monsters. If you were gay, they would still be treating you that way. They are bad people and they do not deserve your pity, much less your concern. Let them die mad. Have your aunt sent out a blast text to the whole family telling them they are not invited and that there will be security at the venue to prevent anyone without an invite from getting in. They don't get to pretend they view you as family when they have spent years making sure you knew exactly how little they thought of you. Tell your FIL that her family is not your family, no matter what, is an insane thing to say about people who abused you. Make sure she understands that this is a hill you will die on and that your abusers, make sure you use that word, are not going to be allowed to force their way into your life, no matter who they share genes with. If FIL hasn't experienced abuse, she has no business speaking to your situation. OP. Until today, my mother-in-law did not know my real history with them because I did not think it was necessary, but I did it because my aunt/mother told me that it would be good for her to know my reasons. It was a horrible thing for her to know, and now she is totally okay with them coming back into my life. Update. It's been almost a month since my post, and I wanted to tell you about some things that have happened. I told my mother-in-law everything that my family did to me in the past. At first, she seemed understanding, but then my partner discovered that she was still talking to my parents and decided to cut ties with her mother. He warned her that if she continued with this attitude, she would never know his grandchildren. He also told her that the only way for her to be part of our lives again is for her to apologize to me and my parents. He also told his father and brothers that if they tried to intervene between his mother, my ex-family, and us, they too would be expelled from our lives and the lives of our future children. One of the things I didn't mention was the topic of my father and my sister. It turns out that sometime after he decided he couldn't take care of me and accepted that my aunt did it, my father returned to my mother, and they had a child, my sister. For her part, she always believed that I lived with my father, and I, for my part, always believed that my sister had a better life, but I found out everything that she had suffered. My ex-family mistreated her day and night. She was practically kidnapped and couldn't even use the phone or social networks, even though she is now of age. When we found out about all this, we decided to go for my sister. I must say that it was not the best way, but we followed her until we found her university. There, we approached her and asked her to accompany us. She was very happy to see us and accompany us together. We unburdened ourselves about everything, we apologized, and told each other everything. We were both victims of our parents. Now, my uncles are fighting for custody of my little brother with my sister's testimony in mind. We hope to achieve it, and we are also taking my sister to therapy to help her a little with all the trauma. Because of my wedding, we decided to bring everything forward and have a small wedding. Only my parents, my brothers, my uncles who have more children, a few friends, and my boyfriend's father and brother were there. We didn't tell anyone, so we had no surprise visitors. Thank you for your advice and support. Now on to the next story. Story 5. This is the first half of a decade-long tale that is currently resolving in a delightful way. But before that, a disclaimer. Let's be clear, we're sharing this tale not for a dramatic plot twist, but as a what not to do guide. So buckle up, You critically dodge the shady characters and aim for a life that's more pizza, less heartburn. Remember, choose your faith wisely. Over a decade ago, I came home to find I was being moved out by my wife. We weren't in a great place, but I was blindsided. I was also served with a protection order that stated I could not come home without prior written permission. I had to go through my wife to see the kids, etc., and it was in effect for 90 days. I was devastated. A relative connected me with a bulldog of a lawyer. This lady was brilliant and no nonsense. She filed a rebuttal to the protection order and told me these things take time and we were unlikely to see a judge before the 90 days were up. She was very clear that I must follow the court order to the letter. If there was any evidence otherwise, I'd be in an uphill battle if, when my wife renewed it, it only took one day before my now ex needed me to take the kids. I crashed at a friend's house, so I had no place to take them. So we agreed I'd watch them at home. I waited a few blocks away while waiting for an email. Ex called me, and I reminded her of the details of the order that I wouldn't come until I had permission. This happened twice more than I waited down the street within the first week. So I told her I wouldn't leave where I was staying until I had the email. It was about 20 minutes away. I texted her to remind her. The very next day, she again did an email. We were planning on me picking up the kids to take them to school since the school was only a few minutes away from my work. However, because I had not received written permission, I ran out of time to drive to pick up the kids and then make it to their school and work. She called, furious that I wasn't there. I reminded her about the permission and that I was out of time. She ended up being very late to work that day. She then went to write me a blanket permission to come and go as needed, but my lawyer advised against it. Although the culmination of this was a few weeks later when she again forgot to send permission. A boyfriend was staying over but didn't have his car with him. They both had to get to work, and that was the day I learned that he was her direct supervisor. Ex had to call a friend from work to pick up the kids and take them to school, and the friend found out, of course. He got out at their work within a week of that. The boyfriend was fired over the relationship. My ex was suspended. By this time, I had my own place, so the kids ended up staying with me most days. I later learned that the protection order was the boyfriend's idea. Ex was quite mad about it as it turned into evidence that I wasn't a threat to her or the family. The judge was quite harsh with her over it when we settled for support and parenting time. She called it intentional and harmful parental alienation. And this is a two-part story that I said at the very start. It starts in malicious compliance and then was posted in pro-revenge, so you can maybe see where this is going to go with that. And I don't think there was much OP could have really done about this apart from what they did, and, get a lawyer involved, and the lawyer saying, just follow everything on that court order to the T because otherwise you're just going to get yourself in trouble, which is exactly what OP did. But I do know with a quick glance over the updates that it does give more information about what happened before this. Now for the update. This is the second part that was removed from pro-revenge. I'll maybe fix it later that this is the second half of a decade-long tale that is currently resolving in a delightful way. A decade ago, my then wife, now ex-wife, began a relationship with a guy and kicked me out of my house. The boyfriend was instrumental in blindsiding me and planning how to keep me from my own kids. Ever since, I've kind of hated him. I've always been polite and respectful with boyfriend because it became my kid's stepdad. I swore if I ever had a chance, I'd get back at him. I figured it would be something petty, but then he gift-wrapped my revenge, and I've been running with it for almost 3 weeks now. My kids are mostly grown now. Some in university, some in grades 11 to 12. Uni kids live with me, but the high schoolers still go back and forth with their mom. I'm also remarried now. My wife and I each have our own vehicles, but my wife owns and insures a minivan for when we're all going somewhere together. The kids are free to use it too, as only one has a car. We only have one set of keys, so I put an AirTag on it. It's a little transponder that tracks its location. I put it on there in case the keys were lost. About 3 weeks ago, one of my older kids took the van out for the night but ended up staying at his mom's on the couch. Around 7 a.m. the next day, another kid asked to use the van. I pinged the AirTag only to find out it was hours away, an industrial section of another town. I was quite concerned why my kid was out there. I called him up and he was at his mom's where he said he'd be. He had no idea the van was missing. I called the police and gave them the location of the van. Within 20 minutes, they had stopped the van, and the driver said he had permission to use it. Lo and behold, it was my ex-wife's boyfriend. The police weren't very interested in detaining him, as it would be easier for him just to drive the van back to our town, and we could sort it out here. However, it wasn't my van, nor was he listed on the insurance to drive it. I asked that it be impounded. In Canada, we can't press charges, but I was adamant that this was theft, and I wasn't going to let it go. Since the guy was out of town with no ride, the police did end up detaining him, probably because it was easier. I was given info for the yard where the van was impounded. Since we had the next day off, my wife and I drove out to the yard to pick it up. When we got there, I first checked the damage since it was sitting a little low. Nothing outside. When I checked inside, I found that it was loaded with industrial fasteners and cable ink seismic mitigation. Turns out, boyfriend used my wife's van to pick up stuff for work. My wife turns on her heels and walks to the office. I had to jog to keep up. She asked who has access to the van. They have the only set of keys to my wife's. It's a shot, only her or me at this point. I get where she's going with this. I instruct them that no one has access to the van but us. I have $135 with me, so I gave it to them as a tip. Promised me that no one would get in there, and they actually moved the van into a secured area within the yard. Then we went home without the van. We weren't even home from a long drive when I got the first text from boyfriend about getting the equipment. I explained that we left the van as there were expenses we were not going to pay. Towing, impounding fees, daily storage. I told him that he'd have to pay for them before I pick up the van. He was super mad and swore he'd pay me back. I said no way. Within an hour, I got a call from his boss. They needed the equipment ASAP for a time-sensitive job. I explained that it was impounded, and I won't have time to get it until next week. Now that has to be paid in advance. Boss swears up and down at me. I calmly explained that I didn't steal a vehicle to transport his stuff. Boss was having none of that, so I said I won't tolerate that abuse and hung up. And I blocked him and his company on every platform, unreachable on. And that was 3 weeks ago. Since then, I've been able to make excuses every single time boyfriend tries to arrange picking up the van. Often because the kids don't have the van, so I have to drive them. Boss has gone through a few times using other numbers and sent a ton of emails that I ignore. But I did reply and explain that both my wife and I need about 4 hours to do the round trip. That it needs to be paid for ahead of time. I added up to do $25 a day for secure storage plus towing and impounding fees, etc. Plus I wanted to be paid for the fuel boyfriend used as well as our travel. Boyfriend and I agreed on the standard 58 cents per kilometer and the boss e-transfer. So the total cost of our driving, by now the van has made 1 trip and our car has done 2. It came to almost $1,600. So on Friday it finally happened. My wife and I drove out and picked up the van. It was prepaid and ready to be released. I dropped off a dozen beers at the office when I picked up the keys and went to grab the van. However, I wasn't going to transport boss and boyfriend stuff, so I arranged for it to be held at the yard at the same rate as the vehicle and loaded it and left right before it closed for the weekend. I got a call from boyfriend asking when he can come by with a work truck to get the stuff. I told him it's still at the impound, almost 2 hours away, and the office opens Monday at 9. It was only silence on the other end, so I hung up after about 10 seconds. Through this, I've been getting vague updates from my ex, who I've got a good relationship with now. She was livid with boyfriend and was clear with me that any and all consequences were squarely on him. He's kept his job but is missing the next pay increase, and he's not getting this year-end bonus. Ex said they're way too short-staffed to let him go, but he's in the doghouse at home and at work. No word on criminal charges for taking the van, but Crown handles that, and I'm not suing in civil court. When Opie actually took out the stuff and left it in the impound under the same charges as well. I wasn't expecting that at the end. I got to be honest, but what do you guys make of this situation? Let me know your thoughts down in the comments below. Now on to the next story. Story 6. Parents forced me to give my $5,000 inheritance to my sister for her business. Then, she sends me pics from her launch party to rub it in my face, so I decided to take revenge. I, 17F, was forced to give away the money that I had inherited from my grandmother a couple of months ago to my older sister so she could fund her business dreams. My older sister, Connie, is 6 years older than me and has always bullied me because she just seems to have something against me for no reason. The truth of the matter is that she bullies me because she can. She knows that she will get away with it like she always has, right from our childhood. My parents already told me not to make a big deal out of things, and whenever I would complain to them about Connie and her behavior towards me, they would tell me that I was being sensitive. It was now that I realized it was just my parents gaslighting me into believing that this was normal behavior by older siblings, and I have nothing to be upset about. But I can tell you guys for a fact that Connie was much worse than other older siblings because she was not messing around with me, and what she did to me was not harmless. Obviously, when we were very little, there was always her trying to put me down with her harsh words, and my parents telling me to shut up but never saying anything to her, even though it was she who was making me cry. That was horrible in itself, but at least it was just verbal. But this particular incident that took place when I was 13 was what made me realize that she didn't just dislike me. She actually hated me. So my family and I had driven to the beach, and Connie had brought along a couple of her friends with her. She was 19 at the time and had come back from college for the weekend, so she and her friends were spending all their time together, and things had been particularly nasty for me because, for some reason, her friends seemed to hate me just as much as she did. I guess they were all suffering from the same kind of mental disorder that made them hate people who had done absolutely nothing to them. Anyway, they had constantly been putting me down, making cutting remarks about me, and just giggling every time I was around. I had gotten sick of it, so I decided to take a break from them and was just sitting by myself alone on the pier with my feet dangling over the water. And then, all of a sudden, I felt a plastic bag being shoved over my head, and somebody kicked me in the back, so I fell into the water. It took me a good couple of minutes to come to my senses and realize what was going on. And then I saw my sister and her friends running away laughing while I splashed around in the water. Thankfully, I'm a good swimmer, and as soon as I recovered from the shock of it all, I took the plastic bag off my head and swam back to the shore as fast as I could. It was the most troubling incident that has ever taken place with me, and when I got back to my parents and started crying about what had happened, my sister and her friends tried to pass it off as a harmless prank. But the worst was yet to come. My parents actually laughed along with them and said that I was just overreacting since I always had been a crybaby. They said that nothing would have happened to me, and my dad even made a joke about all those swimming lessons having finally paid off. The plastic bag that they had put over my head was pretty small, and I might have asphyxiated and died. Also, if I hadn't managed to come to my senses in time and taken that bag off my head, there was a chance that I might have drowned. So many things could have gone wrong, and yet they seemed to find it all very funny. I already knew that my parents had a favorite daughter, and it's definitely not me. But that incident remained with me, and after that, I made up my mind that I was not going to treat any of these people like my family. My only goal was to study hard, get into a college, and then get away from these people because I absolutely could not afford to trust any of them. Since then, I have always maintained my distance from Connie, but unfortunately, I'm forced to live with my parents, so I can't exactly treat them the same way. I have had to act nice with them, and that was also part of the reason why I had to give away the money that I had inherited 3 months ago, even though I really didn't want to. My grandmother, who was my dad's mother, passed away about a year ago, and we finally received the inheritance 3 months ago. She left the house that she used to live in and most of the money that she had left to my parents, while Connie and I received $5,000 each. But I also received a sapphire ring that she owned since I had once told her that I really liked it, and she had joked about how I could have it once she was gone. It was a pretty big amount, and I planned on saving it for my future. But then my parents told me that Connie was starting her own business, so she needed to put together all the money that she possibly could. They were already helping her, and now they were counting on me to do the same. I did not think that it was fair because it was her business, so why should I have to contribute? Also, let's not forget that she has always treated me with nothing but cruelty my entire life, and now I was suddenly expected to help out this person. I refused, but after arguing with me for a couple of days, my dad told me that if I did not help her out, then he would not pay for my college tuition and wouldn't even allow me to come back home once I left. That scared me, and I was already very frustrated with the situation, so I ended up saying yes. It was probably not a good decision to make, But I was under a lot of pressure, and I just didn't think it was worth it to keep fighting with these people because I had my finals coming up and I had to study as well, so I needed some peace and quiet. Which is why, just to shut my parents up, I agreed to give up the inheritance that I had received. After all, they were allowing me to keep my ring, probably because they did not know that it was a real sapphire, since in the will my grandmother had only mentioned it as the ring with the blue stone. So I knew what she was talking about, and I was smart enough to keep my mouth shut since it was worth quite a lot, which turned out to be good for me. So I gave up the 5 grand that I had received from my grandmother and put an end to that argument. 3 months have passed since then, and I've been accepted to a college of my choice. I'm going to start in a couple of weeks. My parents are living up to the promise that they had made to me. They are going to bear all my expenses like my tuition, and because I'm going to be living out of state, they're going to pay for all my expenses as well. I guess it was not that bad of an investment after all to give up my 5 grand because now I don't have to worry about what I'm going to do about money when I'm in college. Everything has been going well for me, and technically it still is, but I feel very guilty about what I did because a couple of days back my sister hosted a launch party since she has finally managed to open her store. She's working with the same people who she was friends with back in college. You know, the girls who pushed me into the sea with a plastic bag on my head and thought that it was hilarious. The 3 of them now own a massive shoes and accessories store, and it's pretty basic stuff, but they think that they did something revolutionary since they believe that whatever they have come up with are really cute things. Anyway, do you have a lot of these men to agree with whatever they say, so their cronies are definitely going to be shopping from there, and I already know it. There was a chance that my sister could have had a successful career ahead of her, but I kind of did something after she sent me a bunch of photos from the launch party to rub it in my face. I was obviously not invited to the event, and when my parents left, they told me that the reason I was not invited was because it was an adults-only event, and since I was 17, they couldn't take me with them. It was a bunch of baloney, but I really didn't want to go anywhere. However, the day after the party, Connie sent me a bunch of photos and a text saying that since I had missed the fabulous party that she had hosted yesterday, she wanted me to live it through the photos. And then, just to be cocky, she said that she couldn't have done this without my help, referring to the 5 grand that I'd had to give up for her. I don't know why, it just got on my nerves. And then, when I saw this guy who was in the photos, I immediately went to my gallery and confirmed my doubts from the photos themselves. I could not tell if they were dating anymore or not since he was only in the background of a couple of pictures, but even though he had grown out some stubble and put on some weight, I could still tell that it was her high school ex-boyfriend. This guy, let's call him Simon, started dating her as soon as she turned 18, even though he himself was 25 at the time. He was from the same high school as the 2 of us, but of course he had graduated way before Connie. They had struck up a friendship online when she was 16. He literally asked her out on the day of her 18th birthday, which I thought was pretty creepy. But Connie thought that it was romantic, and thankfully, this was the time my parents acted like normal human beings and told her that they did not like the idea of her going out with somebody who had been waiting for her to turn 18 in spite of being in his 20s like a creep. They did not want her to go out with him, but I guess she did not obey them and continued to date him secretly. He was working in his dad's company at the time, but after a mere 8 months of being together, they had to break up because he was leaving to live with his uncle in Wyoming and work on the farm, since apparently his father had caught him trying to steal from the company. She was devastated, and that was when our parents found out that she was still with him since she had come back home to beg my dad to get a job here, so he wouldn't have to do what his parents asked of him and allow himself to get shipped off to Wyoming and break things off with her. But my dad did not listen to her and forced her to block him everywhere and promise him that she would never speak to him again. Our house had been turned upside down that day because, on one hand, Connie was begging our parents not to make her break up with him and promising them that he would be better, and on the other, my dad was yelling at her for not listening to them and getting involved with this guy who was clearly up to no good, while my mother just kept crying. Obviously, nobody involved me in anything that day, and I was told to stay in my room and not come out. But I had heard his name being thrown around a lot, so I decided to stalk him on social media. And when someone causes an uproar like that in your home, you don't forget their face that easily. So when I recognized him looking in the background of her photos, I instantly decided to get back at Connie because Connie and my parents didn't count me as part of the family. They had been pretty open while discussing the business around me, so I was also aware of the fact that while my own parents didn't need much convincing, her friends' parents hadn't been that easy to crack. They were mostly convincing their parents to invest in the business because I think finding other investors would prove to be a difficult task since all of them are so stupid and incompetent. But anyway, I knew for a fact that the last person who had been holding out on this business plan was one of her mother, who was a single parent and was skeptical about betting so much money on a store dedicated to nothing but shoes and accessories. She wanted her daughter to find a job, work for a couple of years, gain some experience, and then circle back to this so that she wouldn't end up in a bad investment situation. But Connie and her friends were determined to make this work, so Connie had been complaining about this woman a lot while she was at home, and ultimately, they had decided that they were going to make do with the money that they had for now, and later on, if their business started taking off, then their third friend's mother would also invest in the business. That was the deal that they had come up with, and for that, they had to make sure that the first few months of their business were a huge success since, at the moment, they only had enough capital to go on for a couple of months. But after that, they would definitely need a second round of investment unless, by some miracle, they were able to do enough business to keep up on their own. But realistically, it was unlikely for a business model like that to break even so early, especially when they were so small scale, and the fashion market is not exactly easy to crack. I knew that the last parent who has been holding out, even now, needed just one excuse to back out of this deal, and I knew that this secret could do it. So I reached out to her through a fake account and asked her to call me because I had something important to share with her regarding her daughter's business. I made sure she called me using the Facebook call feature and didn't give her my number since I wanted to remain anonymous. I had to wait for a couple of hours, probably because she was not sure if this was legit or not, but I guess curiosity got the better of her, and she eventually called me up. Then I told her all about what I had seen and who the guy lurking in the background of all the photos actually was. She did not believe me initially, but then I was able to manage to tell her that my job was just to warn her. After this, it was entirely up to her whether she still wanted to invest in this business or not. Then I hung up on my own, sent her a couple of pictures of Connie and Simon from the past, and left it up to her to decide. I guess she decided to back out of it and even told her daughter to do the same because, since the day after I made that phone call, things have been intense. Nobody has any idea that I was behind all of this, but Connie has been calling our parents to try and get them to talk to the mother who backed out and convinced her to come back on board. Her friends are also pretty pissed at her because they can't believe that she didn't share something like this with them, and apparently, she's back together with Simon, but she had lied about his identity so that nobody would recognize him. Even our parents are pretty displeased with her for this. To sum it up, she's screwed because literally everyone in her life is mad at her, and I really want to enjoy all of this, but for some reason I just can't bring myself to do that. I know that this business meant a great deal to her, and now I'm wondering if I was a little too petty, and what I did might have been wrong. I overheard our parents discussing how disappointed they were a couple of hours ago, and even they were pissed at her and were considering exiting her business as investors because she had broken their trust. Then it really spelled trouble for her because they almost never get upset with her, so this is something extremely new, and I don't know, this just doesn't feel as good as I thought it would. So I'd rather for screwing over my sister by trying to get a potential investor to back out of her business because she bullied me as a kid. Update 1. Hey! Thanks to everyone who bothered to respond to my post with their advice. I guess you guys are right. I might have had too much of a conscience to enjoy this, but I'm doing the wise thing and keeping my mouth shut about what I did because if my parents ever found out that it was me behind all of this, they would literally throw me out of the house. And since I'm going to turn 18 in a couple of months, there's going to be nothing stopping them from doing that either. I'm relying on them to pay for my college expenses, so I really can't afford for that to happen. It's been a week since I made my post, and things have gotten much worse for Connie because the mother who had backed out of the deal convinced her daughter to do the same, and now it's just down to the two of them. But this other friend of hers is very upset with her and is demanding that they split the shares of the business 60-40, because her trust in Connie has greatly diminished after she found out about this secret boyfriend who stole from his father's company. To them, she had introduced Simon as this guy she had met on a dating app a couple of months back and had been with him ever since. But after her friend's mom revealed the truth, she was still trying to stick to that story, but nobody believed her anymore. She even tried to pass off the images as fake, saying that somebody might have photoshopped it to make her look like a liar. So she has been visiting our parents almost every single day, and they have been scolding her for what she did, but also are still trying to help her every evening. The three of them get together with their lawyer to try and figure out a way that she wouldn't end up losing her shares of the business. There is a pretty strong chance that they might have to shut down because of this disagreement if they are not able to resolve this conflict quickly, and I don't know how I will feel about that. But honestly, I've just made up my mind to avoid thinking about this at all. The only good thing that has come out of the situation is the fact that because Connie is in trouble, nobody really pays attention to me anymore, so I can come and go as I please, and I'm literally doing whatever I want. It is nice. It has really taken the spotlight off of me, and even when Connie visits, she just ignores me because she's too busy with her own situation, and my parents don't say anything to me either. So this is how I'm spending the last couple of weeks back at home before I leave for college, and it's been great so far. I don't have to answer to anybody about what I do throughout the day, and honestly, I feel like even if I don't come back home for a couple of days and end up spending more time at my friend's place than at my own home, my parents and Connie are not even going to notice anyway. Like I said, this is the one good thing that has come out of the situation, and I'm hoping that they leave me alone until I'm finally ready to go to college. I'm also keeping my fingers crossed that this situation in no way impacts my parents' decision to pay for my college expenses. Something that I hadn't considered earlier, but while typing out this post, it occurred to me. If it does, I'll be screwed, but at least I'll have the satisfaction of knowing that Connie has it worse than me. Update 2. So almost 2 weeks have passed since my original post, and up until last week, nothing had really happened involving me, so I thought I was safe. But I don't think so anymore. Anyway, a couple of days back, I guess the woman whom I had called finally gave in to the pressure and told Connie how exactly she had managed to find out about this past connection. And she didn't tell her the whole truth, but she just told Connie that she had received an anonymous phone call and a couple of photos from somebody, which is how she had found out. Connie is no longer bothering to hide the fact that she knew and used to be with him and didn't really end her relationship because at this point nobody's really stupid, and everybody has figured out that she did not meet him on any dating app, and the pictures were real. And after she found out that there was an anonymous phone call involved, she obviously thought of me first. So yesterday, when she visited us, I had the misfortune of being downstairs because I had made plans to hang out with a friend and was just leaving. But then she stormed into the house and shoved me as hard as she could as soon as she saw me. I lost my balance and my temper and shoved her right back. Then she grabbed me by the hair and started screaming in my face, saying that she knew it had to be me who had made that phone call, and she was going to make sure that I paid the price for doing this. I was panicking, but I couldn't let it show on my face because otherwise, she might have figured out the truth, and I wanted to stick to the fact that it was not me. So I started yelling at her, and I said that it wasn't me and that I wouldn't even know whom to talk to because I met her friend's parents only once when they had all come over for lunch a couple of weeks before they opened the store. Of course, I was lying through my teeth, but I tried to make it sound as believable as I could. After a couple of seconds of us screaming at each other, our parents intervened and finally got us to break apart. But then Connie said that she did not believe a word of what I was saying, and she was sure that it was me who had screwed up her chances of having a career in business and demanded that I allow her and my parents to go through my phone and laptop. I had mentally prepared myself because I knew that this was coming, but I still threw a fit about it because if I just agreed to it, that would seem suspicious. Anyway, I had nothing to be scared of because I had wiped all my devices clean of any evidence that could point towards me being the person who had made that anonymous phone call. Besides, Connie thought that I had made a phone call from my phone number and not a Facebook account that I had created specifically to contact her friend's mom and then deleted it. So she was way off in the first place, and even when she and my parents went through all my accounts on different social media platforms, they were able to find nothing. When she did not find any proof to substantiate her claims that it was me who had told her friends about her past with Simon, she completely freaked out at me and started yelling at me, saying that I had wiped all my devices on purpose, and she knew that it was me. I argued with her, saying that she had lost her mind just because she was going to lose her business, but she had no right to take it out on me. Eventually, things quietened down a bit, and she started crying. I thought I was in the clear, but it was then that my parents chose to talk to me and said that it was true that they couldn't find anything to prove that I was the one who would leak this information, but nevertheless they believed Connie because she seemed pretty sure of it, and besides there was nobody else who could have known about this. Even though they had been at the party and had seen Simon but hadn't recognized him, so it literally could not have been them. And so that leaves just me because Connie had sent those pictures with Simon in the background to piss me off, and it was very obvious that I might have retaliated. And then, exactly what I had feared would happen ended up happening. They told me that even if they couldn't find any proof, they knew that it was me and were canceling their plan of paying for my college expenses. So now I was on my own, and they did not want any further arguments about this. Then it was my turn to start screaming and crying, but unfortunately, nobody cared about that since I was not Connie. After about half an hour of begging, screaming, and a lot of tears, and still no response from their end, I finally went back to my room and shut myself in and started writing this update to distract myself. I still have the sapphire ring that my grandmother had left me, and I could sell that, but I'm not sure if it would get me through all 3 years of college. So I'm just considering taking out a student loan and asking somebody from my family to become a cosigner because, like I said, there's just a couple of weeks to go until the deadline for making the payment, and I absolutely cannot risk anything. Even if I'm able to cover the first semester by selling the ring, I'm not sure about the rest, and eventually, I'll have to figure something out. Update 3. Hey, so a lot of things have in place since my last update. It's been a month since I posted, and let me just start off by talking about what happened to me. So I left my parents' place a couple of days after my last update because now, since they were not paying for me to go to college, I did not have any reason to stay with them or keep in touch. I packed my bags and left to go live with a friend of mine. I had already discussed things with her, and she told me that I was welcome to come live with her and her family. She was taking a gap year, and after living with her for a couple of days, she and her parents told me that she wanted to start working at her dad's business. So she really didn't have any interest in going to college in the first place. But her parents did have a college fund set aside for her, so I could use that for the time being. I tried to decline, but they convinced me since her parents had known me for a long time and said that it was as good as sending their own daughter to college. And honestly, I was in no position to say no to an offer like that, so I took them up on it. And even though I am sure that they don't expect me to pay them back, I'm going to make sure that I do. I am on campus right now, and I didn't even have to sell my grandmother's ring, so I'm very grateful to my friend and her parents. And as for Connie, things didn't end too well for her because she ended up selling all the shares of the business, and now her friends own the store entirely. She had to cut her losses and leave because it had been established that nobody could really trust her anymore. And unfortunately, my parents couldn't do anything about that since it was completely out of their control. She is probably upset about it because this entire thing was her idea in the first place, but I guess she should be relieved because I don't think the store is going to do well in the future anyway. Anyway, that's none of my business because I have no contact with him anymore. I'm just going to focus on my future now. Now on to the next story. Story 7. My husband wanted to sleep with other people. Now he's upset about me doing it. My husband basically begged for a year, maybe longer, to sleep with other people. He knew I didn't want it. I told him no over and over and over. I was crying so many times after he would ask. I told him I was depressed about it. I didn't want it. Why does he want other people? He said it's nothing about me. He just wants to see what it's like with other people. I look good, but he isn't doing it because of looks. Basically, just wanted to try anyone else. After he wouldn't stop, I said fine. I told him I didn't want to do it, but he would not quit asking. So fine, just go for it. He did some stuff with a person, but not full-blown sex. That is all done. He told me when he was begging the whole time that I can do it too, and I can go and have fun and go away for the night. Well, I wasn't that interested, but I started talking to someone, and the conversation just went that way. I haven't felt wanted like this in forever. Keep in mind, he told me a week ago, I can go find someone and just tell him where I'm going. So I told him last week I'm talking to someone. Then the other night said okay, I'm going to do it. Well, then he comes to me the next day and says he was so sad about it, and he couldn't sleep all night and he's scared I'm going to leave him. I told him honestly, I'm pretty pissed because I felt like that for a year, and he knew I didn't want to do it but he kept begging. So he's getting what he wanted. So now he's saying he regrets it. He feels bad for doing that to me. I told him, oh well, he did it and it's too late to change it when it's benefiting me. I honestly might divorce if he tells me I can't because he put me through so much. I do not want to be a single mom, but I'm pretty mad about this. I gave him what he wanted after all of that torment and heartache, and now he is pulling this. He said he hasn't changed his mind, but if he does, then I'm done. He wanted this. He got it. He didn't care about how much it hurt me. Edit. I wanted to add more info about being a single mom. I've been a stay-at-home mom a long time. I've absolutely no family or help in there. I'm alone. Half of me feels it isn't fair that I should have to go struggle alone because of his choice to do this. He will be fine. He makes great money. I'm the one being punished. I feel like maybe at this point I might have to, but it just adds to the hurt. I'm gonna have to struggle so much for something I never asked for. I didn't sign up for this. I signed up for a family. I didn't finish school and I will not find a good paying job. I have no idea how to afford this, and it makes me sad. I won't be able to be there as much for my daughter anymore if I do this. I know parents do it all the time, but I like the life I had before this happened. It just doesn't feel fair. Biggest that her mom worked for us because he works a ton constantly and goes out of town for work trips, and we didn't have to worry about 2 work schedules. I just got to be a mom and focus on my family. Now we sit in situations like this a few times on this channel now, and I never understand what's going through people's mind when your partner says no, they don't want this, and you try to convince them otherwise. I got to be honest, I just can't see a particularly good outcome from this, and by good, I mean like the relationship stand together. I just can't see it happening. That's who am I? Restart says, yeah, I've seen this too often, but the guy starts not being attracted to his wife physically due to pregnancy or aging or what have you, pushes for an open relationship hard, and the wife eventually caves because she loves him and wants to stay married to him. And he tries to find someone to have sex with. Finds not many women are even remotely interested, whereas his wife that he stupidly thought they were wanted had a line at the door she could choose from. All of a sudden, he then magically has decided he wants to close the relationship again. Pathetic. Embarrassed Bit says, men, especially married, overthink their hotness. They didn't realize that being open means your wife easily being wanted and able to bang many guys while he's struggling to find anything. Once they wake up and realize it ain't great as I thought, and my wife can get it any time, many of them want to shut it down. Women have sex when they want. Men have sex when they can. You have a right to be pissed. Your feelings are valid. Good luck in whatever you choose. Molotov says, being a single mom may seem bad, but imagine raising a kid with this man who thinks this way. He was willing to hurt you for his own selfish needs. Now he will treat the kid much better. He only thinks about how something will affect him. He didn't care how it affected you or your kid. Mission Practice says, my husband did this to me a few months ago. Said he wanted to open our marriage. I didn't want to. He broke my heart. I got a date before he did. He begged me not to go, and then we decided to work on things. Things were great for a few weeks, and now they're back to be in the same way. Be what makes you happy. Selfish and don't think of us far too often. Your husband, I'm sure wouldn't worry about making you a single mom if he found someone else. So don't worry about hurting him. After a year of torment, you deserve happiness. And one more comment from NYC who says, yeah, your husband is kind of an idiot. His exact situation happened to a pair of close friends of mine. Husband saw a single male friend of his making out with 2 single female friends at a party, each of whom he was attracted to, and thought, wow, I'd give my left arm to be with either one of those, let alone both. Now his wife was very attractive, and he didn't want a divorce. He just wanted to get some on the side with her permission. So he approached her with this, and initially, she shut him down. Eventually, he wore her down and she said they could try it. He didn't want to be seen as the bad guy cheating on his wife, and back then, the my wife and I have an arrangement was such a trope because it was almost never true. So he wanted her to go first, but she was uncomfortable approaching someone like that, especially since marital infidelity, even with your spouse's approval, went completely against their upbringing. Solution was going to a mutual friend of theirs who was single, and he knew his wife found attractive from comments she made in passing, and in so many words said, please sleep with my wife, and telling him why. A friend thought the husband was an idiot for putting up such an attractive woman, but thought, hey, if they're both okay with it, I'll be down to be with her, even if it's just once. So the wife and friend slept together, and then it went from a one-time thing to every now and again thing to whenever they could arrange a thing. Meanwhile, the husband got nowhere with any of his attempts. He was not nearly as attractive as his wife. So when he approached his wife about shutting down the openness, the response he got was divorce papers, and she ended up with a friend. I'm just surprised how many open relationships there are. There's just like story after story below this one about people giving their experiences with it. But hey, update. Well, things are still kind of in limbo right now. We got into a couple of fights since that last post, and I think we have talked a lot and gotten a lot of things out of the way. Honestly, I've never seen my husband that sad or worried before. I only see him cry twice, and he was crying over this. Now we are not divorcing. Not sure if I'm even interested in the other guy anymore. We haven't been talking much because of his end, not mine. During the first fight we had, I told my husband I don't care what he says. I'm doing it either way since he wanted it. I told him he's just mad he hasn't found anyone. He said maybe that's true, but he's not sure. So then he was depressed a few days because I said I'm gonna do whatever I want to do. But now that I'm losing interest in the other guy, we might just close it off on both ends and go to therapy. It also might keep it open though. The other thing, I think my husband has a porn addiction. The last year at times, he'd rather have that than me. I told him I think he has one. Since this happened, he told me he thinks I was right and he stopped watching it. Honestly, I think he does feel bad and he does want to try. He knows I'm mad that he put me through all of that, but he says he didn't realize it made me so depressed. I'll show how he didn't notice, but whatever. I just want to say besides this issue, he's a really good husband and dad. He isn't a bad person and I do want to try to work through this. It's not like I have anything else going on anyways. If I'm ever single again, I'm staying that way. I've been divorced before but had no kids together. My ex was horrible and controlling. You'd pin me against the floor if I was upset. His behavior and told me that I wasn't allowed to move until I stopped crying. A lot of other too, but you get the idea. My husband isn't like that at all, and before this, things were fine. So maybe we can get back there. I want to try at least. And I got to say, coming out of that story, I'm not sure how I felt about the ending. Opie mentioned that previous relationship, that previous abusive relationship, and sort of like set that as a bar for their relationship and said, oh well, my current husband isn't that bad, so it's okay. And it's like, well, no, the F it's not. I know maybe that's just me on that one. Let me know your thoughts down in the comments below. Now on to the next story. Story 8. My stepmom pretended to love us for years while venting her hatred online. When I exposed her, it broke our family, and my sister's depression spiraled. I've been living with my dad, 52M, and stepmom Diane, 45F, for the past year while finishing up my master's degree in psychology. My parents divorced when I was 10, and dad married Diane when I was 16. I have 2 younger siblings, Alex, 19M, and Sophie, 17F. Diane and dad also have a 4-year-old son, Ethan. Growing up, I always thought Diane was pretty cool. She seemed to make an effort with us kids, and I never felt like she treated us differently than Ethan. Sure, there were some awkward moments as we all adjusted, but overall, I felt lucky to have a stepmom who seemed to care. Our family has always been close-knit despite the divorce. My mom and dad managed to maintain a civil relationship for our sake, and we'd often have big family gatherings that included both sides. Diane seemed to fit in seamlessly, always bringing her famous apple pie to Thanksgiving and organizing Secret Santa for Christmas. I remember when Dad first introduced us to Diane. I was 14, still adjusting to the reality of my parents' divorce. Diane was patient and kind, never pushing us to accept her, but always making it clear she was there if we needed her. She'd bring us little gifts. A book she thought I'd like, a new video game for Alex, art supplies for Sophie. Felt genuine, like she really wanted to connect with us. As we got older, Diane became more like a friend. She'd give me advice about boys in school, help Alex with his college applications, and spend hours crafting with Sophie. When Ethan was born, I was worried things might change, but Diane went out of her way to make sure we still felt included. Last week, I was using Diane's laptop to print something for school when I noticed she was still logged into her email. I was about to close it when I saw a notification from a parenting forum. Curiosity got the best of me, and I clicked on it. What I found shocked me to my core. Diane had been posting regularly on this forum for years, venting about how much she resented us stepkids. She complained about having to deal with us and how she couldn't wait for Alex and Sophie to move out. There were horrible comments about how annoying Sophie's drama was. Sophie has struggled with anxiety and depression since middle school, and how Alex was lazy and unmotivated. But the posts about me were the worst. Diane wrote multiple times about how she thought I was manipulative and trying to come between her and my dad. She accused me of intentionally excluding her and said I was too clingy with my dad. She even implied there was something inappropriate about our relationship because I sometimes hug my dad or lean on him while watching TV. I felt sick reading it all. This whole time, I thought we had a decent relationship, but it turns out Diane has secretly hated us for years. She's been putting on an act this whole time. As I kept scrolling, I found posts from just a few months ago when I moved back in. Diane complained endlessly about having an adult freeloader in the house, even though I contribute to groceries and utilities. She said I was stunting Ethan's development by hogging all the attention. I'm devastated and don't know what to do. Part of me wants to confront Diane, but I'm worried that will just make things worse. I also feel guilty for snooping even though it was accidental at first. Should I tell my dad? My siblings? I'm afraid of blowing up our whole family dynamic, but I also feel like I can't pretend I don't know this information. How am I supposed to interact with Diane now, knowing how she really feels about us? I keep replaying all our interactions in my head, wondering if I somehow missed the signs. Was Diane really such a good actress all these years? Or did something change to make her resent us so much? For context, Diane has always seemed a bit insecure in her role as stepmom. When she and my dad first got together, she tried really hard to bond with us kids. Maybe too hard sometimes, planning elaborate family outings or buying us expensive gifts. My mom wasn't thrilled about it, which caused some tension. I remember one particular incident when I was about 17. Diane had planned this big surprise trip to Disney World for all of us, including my mom. She thought it would be a great way for everyone to bond, but my mom felt uncomfortable and declined, which led to a huge argument between her and Dad. Diane was crushed, and I wonder now if that was a turning point for her. As we got older, Diane backed off a bit. I actually appreciated that she gave us space and didn't try to force a mom role. Now I wonder if that was just her true feelings coming out. I'm especially upset about the comments regarding Sophie. My sister has been struggling with her mental health for a few years now. She was diagnosed with anxiety and depression at 15, and it's been a rough road. Diane has always seemed supportive, going with Sophie to therapy appointments, researching coping techniques, even starting a mental health support group at her church. To find out she actually views Sophie's illness as drama is heartbreaking. I remember countless nights when Sophie would have panic attacks, and Diane would sit with her for hours, just holding her hand and helping her breathe. Was that all an act? The thought makes me sick. I'm also confused about the accusations regarding my relationship with my dad. We've always been close. I'm a bit of a daddy's girl, I'll admit, but there's absolutely nothing inappropriate about it. My dad and I share a lot of interests. We both love sci-fi movies, enjoy hiking, and have heated debates about politics. I never thought Diane had an issue with it before. The stuff about Alex being lazy really bothers me too. My brother had a hard time in high school and took a gap year before starting community college. He's been working part-time at a local bike shop and trying to figure out his path. Diane always seemed encouraging, even helping him research different career options, but apparently, she just views him as a deadbeat. I'm trying to decide if I should say something to my siblings. Alex still lives at home, and Sophie is there most of the time when not at mom's. Do they deserve to know how Diane really feels about them, or would telling them just cause unnecessary pain? Part of me wants to pack up and leave immediately, but I only have a few months left in my program, and moving would be a huge hassle. Plus, I'd feel terrible abandoning my siblings and Ethan. I'm so angry at Diane for putting on this charade for years. I trusted her and viewed her as family. Now I feel like our entire relationship was based on lies. How do I move forward from here? I can't unhear what I've read, but blowing up my family also feels wrong. I'm lost and could use some advice on how to handle this mess. The worst part is I can't stop thinking about all the moments I thought we were bonding. Like when Diane taught me how to make her famous apple pie or when she helped me pick out my prom dress. Was she gritting her teeth the whole time, resenting every minute spent with me? It makes me question everything. I'm also worried about Ethan. He adores his older siblings, always wanting to play with Alex or have Sophie read him stories. How long before Diane's resentment starts affecting him? Will she try to turn him against us? I feel like I'm carrying this huge secret, and it's eating me up inside. Every interaction with Diane now feels fake and strained. I'm afraid I'll snap and confront her in front of everyone. What makes it worse is that I'm studying psychology. I should be better equipped to handle family drama like this, but all my training goes out the window when it's my own family involved. I could really use some advice on how to proceed. Do I confront Diane? Tell my dad? Keep it to myself and try to move out as soon as possible? I feel like there's no good option here, just varying degrees of bad. Update 1. It's been about a week since my last post, and a lot has happened. I really appreciate all the advice and support from everyone. After agonizing over it for days, I decided I had to tell my dad what I found. It didn't feel right keeping this information from him, especially since it impacts our whole family. I asked Dad to meet me for coffee away from the house. When I told him about Diane's secret forum account, he was stunned at first. He didn't believe me. He kept saying there must be some misunderstanding. But when I showed him screenshots I had taken, the color drained from his face. Dad was furious. He couldn't believe Diane had been harboring these feelings for years without ever talking to him about it. He was especially upset about the comments regarding me and Sophie. We talked for hours, going over everything I had found. Dad asked a lot of questions about specific incidents Diane had mentioned. In many cases, her version of events was wildly different from reality. She had twisted innocent situations to paint us kids in a negative light. One incident stood out in particular. Last Christmas, I had given Diane a photo album I made filled with pictures of our family over the years. She had seemed touched, even tearing up a bit, but in her forum posts, she complained about how I had deliberately chosen photos where she looked bad or wasn't included. It was like we had experienced two completely different events. By the end of our conversation, Dad was determined to confront Diane. He said he needed answers and couldn't move forward without addressing this. When we got home, Dad asked Diane to talk privately. I took Ethan to the park so they could have space. When I returned a few hours later, the atmosphere in the house was tense. Dad told me that Diane initially tried to downplay everything, saying it was just venting and didn't reflect her true feelings. But when Dad pressed her on specific posts, she got defensive and angry. She accused me of violating her privacy and tried to turn it around on me. Ultimately, Diane admitted that she has struggled with resentment towards us stepkids for years. She said she felt like an outsider in her own family and was jealous of our bond with Dad. But instead of addressing these feelings head-on, she bottled them up and vented online. Dad told Diane he needs time to process everything and decide how to move forward. He asked her to stay with her sister for a while to give everyone space. Diane left yesterday afternoon. I'm relieved that everything is out in the open now, but also sad and anxious about what comes next. Dad seems lost. I can tell he's struggling to reconcile the Diane he thought he knew with this secret side of her. I finally told Alex and Sophie what was going on. Alex was angry but not entirely surprised. He said he always felt some underlying tension with Diane but couldn't put his finger on it. Sophie was devastated. She looked up to Diane and feels deeply betrayed. Sophie shared a memory that broke my heart. Last year, when she was really struggling with her depression, Diane had taken her on a weekend trip, just the two of them. Sophie said it was one of the best weekends of her life, feeling like she finally had a mom who understood her. Now she's questioning if any of it was real. We're all trying to support each other right now. Dad is being great, making sure we know none of this is our fault. He's also arranging for Sophie to see her therapist more frequently to process everything. I'm not sure what the future holds for our family. Part of me hopes Diane and Dad can work things out through counseling, but a bigger part feels like the trust is irreparably broken. How can we ever feel comfortable around her again, knowing her true feelings? For now, we're taking it day by day. Dad says his priority is making sure us kids feel safe and supported. He's promised to be more vigilant about our family dynamics moving forward. I'm still processing my own emotions about everything. I alternate between anger, sadness, and numbness. I'm trying to focus on finishing up my degree and being there for my siblings, but it's hard not to dwell on all the years of deception. Ethan is starting to ask questions about where his mom is. It breaks my heart to see him confused. Dad has been amazing with him, but it's clear Ethan senses the tension in the house. I'll update again when there are any major developments. Thank you all again for the support and advice during this difficult time. Update 2. It's been about a month since my last update. A lot has happened, so I wanted to share where things stand now. Diane is still staying with her sister. She and my dad have had a few conversations, but no real resolution yet. Dad says he's still trying to wrap his head around everything and figure out if there's any way forward. The initial shock has worn off for us kids, but we're all still struggling in our own ways. Alex has thrown himself into work and barely comes home anymore. Sophie's anxiety and depression have flared up again. She's having trouble in school and spends most of her time in her room. I've been trying to step up and be there for everyone, but it's exhausting. I feel like I'm constantly walking on eggshells, trying to keep the peace and support my family while also dealing with my own emotions. Ethan is really feeling the absence of his mom. He's been having nightmares and acting out at preschool. Dad has been amazing with him, but it's clear Ethan senses the tension in the house. Last week, Diane reached out and asked to meet with me one-on-one. Against my better judgment, I agreed. We met at a neutral coffee shop, and it was about as awkward as you'd expect. Diane started by apologizing profusely. She said she never meant to hurt anyone, and that her posts were just a way of venting her insecurities. She tried to explain that she's always felt like an outsider in our family and didn't know how to address those feelings in a healthy way. She talked about how overwhelming it was to suddenly become a stepmom to 3 kids, especially since she had never planned on having children of her own. She said she felt constant pressure to be perfect and live up to the image of the cool stepmom she thought we wanted. Diane also revealed some things about her own childhood that shed some light on her behavior. Apparently, she grew up in a very dysfunctional family with an emotionally abusive mother. She never learned how to express her feelings in a healthy way, which led to her bottling everything up and then venting online. I listened to what she had to say, but honestly, it was hard to take her apology seriously. How can you claim to love someone while secretly trashing them online for years? I told Diane that while I appreciate her apology, I don't think I can ever fully trust her again. We talked for about an hour, going over some of the specific incidents she had posted about. In many cases, her recollection of events was completely different from reality. It was clear she had built up this narrative in her head that didn't align with what actually happened. One incident stood out. Diane had posted about how I deliberately excluded her from my college graduation celebration. In reality, I had specifically asked Dad to make sure Diane was there, and had even given her a special bonus mom card to thank her for her support. When I reminded her of this, Diane seemed genuinely confused, as if she had completely rewritten the memory in her mind. By the end of our conversation, I felt drained but also somewhat relieved. I was able to express some of the hurt and anger I've been feeling, which felt cathartic. Diane seemed genuinely remorseful, but I'm not sure that's enough to undo years of deception. I told Dad about the meeting afterward. He was glad we were able to talk, but cautioned me not to get my hopes up about any quick resolution. He said he and Diane have a lot to work through before any decisions can be made about the future of their relationship. For now, we're all just trying to establish a new normal. Dad has been amazing through all of this, making sure we all feel supported and loved. He's been spending extra time with Ethan, trying to maintain some stability for him. I've decided to extend my stay at home beyond graduation to help out with the kids and support Dad. It's not ideal, but family comes first right now. Alex and Sophie need stability, and I want to be there for them. Sophie has started seeing a new therapist who specializes in family trauma. It seems to be helping. She's slowly coming out of her room more and even started painting again, which has always been her outlet. Alex and I have been trying to keep things as normal as possible for Ethan. We've been taking him on outings to the park and zoo, trying to give him some fun experiences amidst all the tension at home. I'm still angry at Diane, but I'm trying to focus that energy on healing and moving forward. Whether she remains part of our lives long-term remains to be seen. For now, I'm just taking it one day at a time and trying to be there for my family as best I can. The whole situation has made me reflect on my own future relationships and potential step-parenting. I always thought I understood the challenges, but this has opened my eyes to how complex blended families can be. I'm grateful for the support of my friends and extended family during this time. It's been a stark reminder of the importance of having a strong support system outside of your immediate family. As for what comes next, I honestly don't know. Dad and Diane are starting couples counseling next week, but I'm trying not to get my hopes up one way or the other. For now, we're all just focused on healing and moving forward, whatever that may look like. We have reached the end. If you enjoyed this video, please be sure to like and subscribe to the channel for more videos like this, and give us your thoughts about the stories in the comments section. Thank you and see you in the next video.